to the Chai Academy. Good afternoon to all. Thank you for joining us today. So the Chai Academy, as you know, is daily classes. Usually incorporate the classes as part of a course, but however, each class is self-contained and it's encapsulated. So therefore, if you miss one class, you do not fret, as this class will be independent of the previous one. Of course, the previous class we discussed good inclination versus bad inclination, as Freud calls it, the id. We also, in a previous class, discussed concept of free will, and can we really blame that I was just following orders? So some very interesting stuff, and I'm enjoying this journey. I hope you are as well. Today's class is called Olam Haba, the afterlife. So it's interesting. In Judaism, there's two afterlives. Okay, Olam Haba is mentioned is mentioned like twice in the Talmud and places like that in two separate categories. One is posthumously, when a person passes, they go to Olam Haba, heaven. The second one is Olam Haba, is the world to come, which is the messianic view, the utopian era, if you will. We will not in this class discuss the utopian era. We're going to talk about posthumously heaven, going to heaven, going to hell, etc. That's the afterlife, literally the afterlife of one's 100-year-old journey here. So, first and foremost, it is rarely discussed in Judaism, and even in the big books. It's not brought down in Torah, definitely not clearly. Torah doesn't mention heaven and hell. It is mentioned in the Talmud, but albeit vaguely. Jews don't really talk about it. It's not part of our daily lexicon. It really is not. It exists, as we'll discuss, but it's really not. That's not how we roll. That's not how we function. We're not quote unquote obsessed with the afterlife. We're more obsessed with the living. Living in this world and maximizing our time here. Afterlife, yeah, it's a concept, but that's not what we talk about, think about, etc. Now, this is in contrast to other religions. And if you think about it, since the temple was destroyed 2,000 years ago, we've been in exile, right? We no longer have a temple. We're all over the place. We're all on every single continent. You will find the Jewish people. Many of these continents have many different religious practices, and they all talk about the afterlife, all of them. But even though we're steeped in the United States is pretty much a Christian, for the most part, a Christian country, right? So is England. Bahrain is not Christian; it's Muslim, right? Tibet is Buddhism, and et cetera, et cetera. So we're everywhere, and we're steeped in all these different cultures, all these different religions, and yet we really don't talk about heaven and hell, which is remarkable. We don't talk about the afterlife, and you think we would, but we don't. And it's actually a testament to us, is that we're more concerned about the here and now. Yes, as Jews, we plan for retirement, right? So, you have, David Lerner and Associates call you every day, or Jelinski, or whatever the other names are. They call you every day because retirement. Think about the future. So yes, we do that. And we don't say God will provide. No, we do that. We do make sure that we're not going to be a burden on society or on our kids, etc. But we don't really talk about afterlife. The closest we get to is we may buy a grave in advance. Pre-planning, as it's called. Or a stone, or write a will, which you should write a will, and a living will, and make sure you have health proxies, etc. That's as far as we go. We think about our own mortality and we deal with it, but nowhere do we write that a long synopsis of heaven and hell. And if you think about, Muslim terrorists, right, are very big into the afterlife, right? If you commit an act of terror for Allah, and you blow yourself up, and you take a couple of infidels with you, Jewish or not Jewish, then you will be going to heaven. You'll be going to paradise, and there will be 72 Virginians to that's the old joke, right? Washington will be there, and Franklin will, so right, so that clearly in the lexicon it's discussed that there's such a thing as paradise, and there's such a thing as this, and you can earn your paradise. And the terrorists then warp it and say, okay, yeah, kill people, kill the infidels, and you'll get your just reward in heaven. It's worth it to die for, buddy. Give yourself up, blow yourself up, and when you do, the reward in the afterlife is going to be, it's incredible. I think about the witnesses, in Protestants. I think about Protestants. There's many, most Protestants leave you alone, but there, the witnesses, and then there's the witnesses, really. So they feel that if you, but a lot of Protestants feel the same ways, that if you don't believe in Jesus, then you're not going to be saved. In other words, you're going to hell, right? The witnesses have there's a finite number of going to heaven. I think it's 144,000. The rest are not going to heaven. I don't quite understand how it works, but the idea is that yes, you need to believe in order to be saved. And if you don't believe, you're not going to be saved. So there's a strong emphasis on the afterlife. So if you die a non-believer, if you die a sinner, you're not going to be saved. Right? And you're going to, because you didn't believe, you're going to be damned eternally. Judaism, by the way, really doesn't believe in eternal damnation. They believe in something called reward and punishment, but it's not eternal. It's not eternal. You get your reward is eternal, but prior to getting that reward, you need a cleansing in order to be able to. And this is the belief. In order for you to be able to absorb the dosage of godliness, you're going to have to undergo a process. But we don't view it as punishment. We view it more as a purgatory. And it for sure as heck ain't eternal. Right? In Judaism, we say Kaddish for 11 months because we let it known that there is no punishment longer than 12 months. And our loved ones did not get the max. They didn't get the book thrown at them. And therefore, they got, max they got was 11 months. But we don't have this concept of eternal damnation. Believe, not believe, yeah, we have 13 principles of faith. We do. But we don't harp on it. If you don't believe this, and you get this. If you believe this, you get that. It's nothing like that. The question that we need to ask ourselves, why is the Torah silent? It's there in the Kabbalah. Talmud does discuss somewhat of a purgatory. It does, minimally. Why is the Torah silent? Why? Why doesn't the Torah talk about the afterlife? Why is it completely silent? And only through, it alludes to it and to the afterlife. So I think there's a couple of reasons. And by the way, I think the first reason is, how do I know, right? What's in God's mind? What was God's reason? Why God chose to disclose this but not to disclose that? I don't even know how they get. When I see a sawhorse, an oil, a pumping jack, a pump jack, whatever it's called, I don't even know how that works. I'm supposed to know how. I take a vitamin D3 every day. I have no idea. Where is it from? Where do you get vitamin D? I know you get it from the sun, but I'm not eating sun, so I have no idea. I'm supposed to know. Why God didn't put it in the Torah, but we can theorize. Why isn't heaven, hell, afterlife mentioned in the Torah? Why not? So reason one is, je ne sais. Je ne sais pas. I don't know. I just don't know. You have to say that. You have to be humble. The second reason, which we can theorize, speculate, is that the Torah was written for all times. But in the era it was written, in that generation it was written, they had just come out of Egypt. Egypt was completely obsessed with death. Completely. The number one bestseller in Egypt, right, at that time was called the Book of the Dead. Everything about Egypt was death culture. Right? We know this from all the hieroglyphics. We know this from, you get a pyramid built, and the more noble you are, the bigger your pyramid will be, or your burial place will be. And they learned how to mummify par excellence. They were the first ones to really introduce embalming. They were obsessed with death. Right? And the Torah says, obsessed with death is insane. You got 100 years here, right? Why be obsessed with death? Right? You got to be obsessed with life. So the Torah, it's as a theory, didn't want to start talking about, death and this and death, this and death, that. In fact, if you look at the book of Leviticus, the third book of the 5 books of Moses, of the Bible, of the Torah, the third book is all about how a priest, or even an Israelite, even a regular Jew, or even forget Jew, a regular person, Gentile as well, you can't come onto the holy temple grounds if you recently touched a dead body. Not only are we not obsessed with death, we try and stay away from death because we want to go to the Holy Temple. We want to go to shul. We want to go to synagogue. We want to go pray and worship. And therefore, I got to be sure that I'm free and clear of a dead body. A Kohen, the priest, he can't do his daily duties if he got within 7 feet of a dead body. Furthermore, a Kohen today, in the year 2022, a short few days after January 6th, a Kohen today is not allowed to go to a funeral. Even today, biblically. They can't go to a funeral unless it's a mother, father, brother, sister, son, daughter, or spouse. Can't go, even today. Why? Because life. The whole message of Torah is v'chai bahem. Live with Torah. Don't be obsessed with death. Live. Right? Judaism is actually, for the most part, very opposed to pulling the plug. Very opposed to pulling the plug. There are scenarios where you can't pull the plug. It's better not to be put on life support to begin with. But we're very opposed to pulling the plug. And the reason is, where there's life, there's hope. What about where there's no hope? So Judaism says, okay, in order to ascertain there's no hope, the death has to be certain. And simple brain death is not, according to the Torah, death. Brainstem maybe, but brain death. And there's different rules and regulation. It's complicated. There's somebody I consult on each and every case about how to advise the parents, how to advise the family. I had a case recently with parents, how to advise the family, so etc. So the idea is that a soul in a body for an extra day is incredible. A soul lives over another Shabbat. A soul lives over the holiday of Passover, right? Even though they die right after Passover. That's amazing. Okay? We want to live. Our focus is on life. So the Torah is it's deficient when it comes to talking about death on purpose. And I think, and feel free to comment. So that's reason one. The Torah wants us to be obsessed with life, not obsessed with death. We just left Egypt, and they were crazy, right? Nowadays I think the Bible is the most printed book, right? Every hotel room you go is Gideon's Bible. But back then it was the Book of the Dead. Everybody had it. It was written by Pharaoh Patterson. The other reason I believe is that when death becomes such an obsession, when death becomes the ultimate, the penultimate, not even the ultimate, the penultimate, when death factors in your daily life, it can mess with your life. It can mess with your values. It can mess with your psyche. When you just death, and it's all about the death, and it's all about the death, right? And it's death this, death that. You actually change you, and I can prove it. It's proven empirically. I mean, it's evidence. Spanish Inquisition, right? Fernandad and Isabella, and you had Torquemada, all these evil people, right? All these evil people who tortured, right? You have to be a Christian, you have to bow down to the cross, and you have to accept Jesus and whatever else they came up with, or die. And you didn't just die, they tortured you, and then they burnt you alive at the Order de Fe. Right? Now, were these Spaniards pro-torture? Were they, yes, okay, you stole torture, you this torture, you this, that torture? No, prison, right? If you're raped, maybe you get lashes, but not torture. It wasn't. When it came to their religion, and when it came to the cross, and they wanted people to genuflex, and then they were very into torture. All of a sudden, torture became okay. Why? Because their philosophy is the pain that you are under now, with stabbings and burnings and beatings and finger losses and amputations and whatever they did to you. I don't even know. I can't even. I mean, I've been to London Tower, so I can imagine. Right? They felt it's a benefit. This will help you because you're a stubborn mule and you do not genuflect. Because you're a stubborn mule and you refuse to accept the power of the cross, then we're purifying you for the next life. How obscene is that? How obscene? I ask you. Right? So it played with their mind. Right? They basically said pain, torture, for religious purposes. Pain, torture, and death for religious purposes is so okay, and it's to be lauded because we help these people. So they're in pain. They die on the Order de Fe. Terrible death. Right? We have nerve endings all over our body, and they're being burnt. Every nerve ending. Can you imagine you burn your finger on a hot pot? This is entire body hot pot. And they say, yes, it's worth that severe pain, because thank God they're getting to heaven. It's worth it. That's a distortion of humanity. That's a distortion of morality. That's a distortion of godliness. That's a distortion of religiosity, etc. But because they're so focused in, you gotta get to heaven. You gotta be in the embrace of this and that and saint this and saint that, and therefore Torquemada is doing you a favor by torturing you, by painfully hurting you and then killing you. It's a favor. It's insane. It's insane. It's to me, it should be part of the DSM-5. Mental illness. If you torture somebody because of religious, you're nuts. You're nuts. You're not human. You're a zombie, or you're nuts. In the name of God, how dare you? At least Hitler didn't torture in the name of God. At least he didn't do that. He did it. It was just cruel, evil, etc. But he didn't go around with an outstretched, with a aloof. I work for God. Right? So that to me, Hitler is they're just as bad, Torquemada and Hitler. But Torquemada was, I work for God. I am God's messenger here on earth. I work for the management of the His Highness's royal throne. Insane, delusional. Now, so we don't focus in on death. We don't want it to completely mess and destroy our minds. We don't. That's not where we want to go. Now, so that's the second reason why it's not mentioned in the Torah. Right? The Torah doesn't want to play with us. So once again, just to recap, the first reason is that we don't, he doesn't want us to be obsessed with death, obsessed with life. Live the moment, live your life to the fullest. The second reason is that you kill in the name of God, and you think you're doing them a favor, and it's warped. And I think that there's another reason. Is the Torah, I believe, doesn't have to talk about life and death and afterlife and what's going to happen, or what reward, what punishment. Is there reward? Is there punishment? The Torah completely whitewashes it, right? The Torah does not talk about it. And I believe the reason is because it clearly does not have to. It's unnecessary. It's irrelevant. And the reason why it's irrelevant is because if you believe in God, if you believe that God is omnipotent, God is omnipresent, God is powerful, God is just, then you can't believe that this world, a world of physicality, a world where evil wins so many times, is it. Right? So, right, it's Hitler, millions and millions of people, right? Shooting himself, he got off easy, right? So if you believe God is just, you believe God is gracious, forget that, but you believe God is just, then this can't be it. The problem with this world just being it is that means that we all live in this world. Hitler, Torquemada, myself, the Rebbe, the Holy Ari, Maimonides, Rashi, and Saddam Hussein all get the same. It's all the same. You die when you die. Finished. Right? If you believe in a God and don't believe, and say, no, I don't believe in the afterlife, you haven't thought it through. It's incongruous. It doesn't make sense. You believe in a just God, but the buck stops here, and that's it. There's no heavenly sense of reward and punishment. So that's actually a sad existence. That would be, right, that's it. That's it. Some people are rich, some people are poor, some people die from malnutrition, some people die from a bullet, a stray bullet, friendly fire, or some people die with a random act of violence, and some people die because they trip on the sidewalk and they hit their head. So and that's it. But everybody, everybody dies. So that's right. It's immoral. It's immoral, perhaps, to say that I have the same fate as Hitler. So there must be an afterlife, because I don't have the same fate as Hitler. Hitler is going to be punished. I hope and pray that I dodge not only a physical bullet, but a spiritual bullet, the afterlife bullet. But Hitler's going to be punished. And if you don't believe in that, then it's I don't know how you can believe in God. So if you don't believe across the board, okay. But if you believe partially, it's a real problem. It's a real problem. So and it's you're not aligned. You're not thinking clearly. It's almost, like you say, okay, I can't even think of an example right now, but I can't think of an example, honestly. I have to think it through. But there's inconsistencies in life. This will be another inconsistency, right? So so that's why I believe the Torah does not have to mentions God many times, thousands of times. It mentions God said this, and God ruled this, and God told this one and that one, etc. Because it mentioned God, if you believe in God, there's automatically there's reward and punishment. There's God is going to set the record straight. The Mishnaic law gives you advice, and the Mishnaic law says as follows: Al tisyaesh min haparanios. Do not think that either you or somebody else is going to escape your just reward. Do not think it. You're not going to escape it. Right? Now, the beauty of it being given by God is that God is just. Human being is can be very inconsistent, right? A human being, it could also be somewhat arbitrary. I know we have laws, and they're very sophisticated laws, and murder one, murder two, and you get this and get that and the other. But you can also pass laws that if it's less than $950, we're not gonna, it's okay, you can steal, but as long as it's $950 or less. And I don't know, but if that's per day, per week, or per month, or per annum, I don't know. Is it $950 at a time? Can you steal $950 twice in a day and still not be prosecuted? Can you keep on coming back? I don't know. So humans are fickle, and humans, they will decide this and decide that. God is not fickle. God is just, and really just. So therefore, don't worry. Let God, or heaven, let God do his thing. You know, and there's a it is brought down in the book of Tanya, Kabbalah. It says that in heaven, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be appreciating godliness. We're going to have God's divine light, and it's going to be penetrate into our soul and reconnect our essence with God's essence. And we're going to study God's, we're going to study God, the pursuit of knowledge of godliness. And now, for some, that's heaven. For some, that's hell. Right? Yeah, there's this guy passed away, dear friend of mine, who said, he told me many times that, Rabbi, if I precede you, right, if I pass before you, he says, I'll be downstairs at the bar, because I don't want any part of like studying 24/7 in heaven. You know, tongue in cheek, of course. So you basically you bask in the glory of the divine presence. That is heaven. Tanya talks about different interesting punishments. I don't even know if I want to go there. Maybe a different time. But rest assured, there's a heaven, and for the aforementioned reasons. Now, I noticed there was no comment, so clearly I was clear. If you do have a comment, then by all means, please write one here. Any feedback is great. Rabbi at the Chai Center is my email address. You can contact me there as well. And once again, a personal favor: if you can let people know about the Chai Academy, share this one. I think it's should be a fascinating. On an average day, we probably get throughout the day about 50 views or something, and then over time. But let's see if we can get can study Torah together and have more interaction as well. I would like both of those things. All right. God bless. May the Schwartz be with you.